Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome as you start coming on in. I got to pull up all the stuff on my side for chats and things like that. But good morning, everyone, as you start coming on in. Welcome. I'm Nick Perro, not your dad, joined by KR Byers for today's intelligent masculinity discussion here on Sick of the Shit Publications. KR, good morning. And do you mind
Good
introducing
morning.
yourself to everybody as we start coming on in today?
So I'm KR Byers. I am just a dude. I don't even know why Nick invited me. We met on the street one day. He just was like, "Hey, you want to be on my Substack live?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, man." No, I write here on Substack, and we had a episode on Soso's page one day that he came in and saved the day like a true hero, and so. Yeah, we decided to chat, and I don't know how to talk about myself without being like just from the beginning. I got to start the story from the beginning. So I was actually born '87.
Back in my day when the dinosaurs were alive.
All the way in the 1990s, all the way in the 20th century. There you go.
Yeah, that being said, the first time I felt old or older was when I got told that I don't need to look at your license. It starts with a one. And I was like, oh, that's how you're doing it now. Is just if it starts with a 19, then we're old enough. And man, I felt old that day.
I know. I went in to buy a beer a couple weeks ago. I'll drink like a beer or two on like some Sundays. Most Sundays I don't, but especially if I'm out active, I like to drink a few beers. I don't know why. Just being active makes me want to drink. But I went in to buy a few beers at the gas station and just took out my ID out of habit. And they're like, "Oh, I don't need that." And I was like, why would you do that to somebody? You're gonna get your payback someday. Some little stupid twerp behind the counter is gonna say, "Oh, I don't need that," to you someday and make you just feel like a total ass.
Yeah. I was born in the late 1900s. Yeah, when they started talking about us in schools as the late 1900s, I was like, ugh, now I feel like I'm from the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of those old, like before the war, there was these groups of people, and now we know after the war, nobody ever remembered the late 1800s. And we're like, well, they're not going to remember the late 1900s now, but
Yeah.
they are
No.
because we're going to make them. So
Yeah.
let's have a great discussion. Yes, I invited you after Soso had some technical issues. There was some issue. Her internet went down during a Time for Life episode. I jumped in and was able to have a great conversation with KR, and we talked a little bit about some of the things we'll talk about today, about his kids, about like his spouse, and how you are as a human, and that's really what this conversation is about. Is it's a better humaning discussion. We're trying to and care I You should have gotten an email. It was probably pretty old now, that you would have gotten it, that says is it that has, if you search for it, that says is inviting you. You may see one from me inviting you to this live, and it still should work for you if you accept it, and your name will appear on the live stream, and you can let your subs know that you've gone live this morning. If you want to do that, no pressure if you don't, because I'll just add you at the show after the show anyway, but during, that way your subs get noticed or notified of everything that's going on this morning. Yeah, Courtney, it does feel like we grew up in the Oregon Trail. Like I remember playing that as a kid and then never making it because we'd all die. We'd all die along the way, and you'd get scurvy or some shit, or you'd get gout, or you'd get drowned in a river, and your cart would light on fire, or the snow yeti from that little ski game would come out of nowhere and just eat you while you're coming down the mountain, and then you couldn't go anywhere down the ski trail. Do you remember that game?
I still play that game sometimes. So I downloaded it. You can now go buy or get they have it adapted, you know, so it's the same
Yeah.
game, but it's adapted to be able to work on modern computers and stuff. I want them to make it into an app that doesn't have micro purchases, zero freaking micro purchases.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to pay up to like $20 for that game if it's just a permanent purchase. You own it if I can get it on my phone.
Yeah, I want that too. Like I
Great
would.
game.
I still remember, and here's a game that I sometimes forget the name of, but I hope I at least describe it right, because I feel like you'd be someone who would also know this game. It was like the Chips Adventure. You were this little guy, like this 8-bit game. You were this little like green dude, and you were locked in all these rooms, and you had to find a key, and you had to like open doors and escape. I don't remember exactly the title of this game, but I know it had like Chips something, and you would just go. It was one of those like old school, like open all the doors, try not to die games. Chips Challenge. Oh, thank you, Courtney. Chips Challenge. You would probably really enjoy that game. Like that type of like fun emulator game. I think there's still, it's either Chips Challenge or Chips Adventure. One of the two.
Oh yeah, okay. I know what game you're talking about. Like I never really got like big into that one, but that is like it is a fun game. I just looked it up and yeah, you're right. That's a fun one.
Okay, so going down this line, how do you keep yourself entertained in this? Like, do you allow yourself to still play video games? Do you play board games? What types of things do you do to keep yourself entertained and have fun? Like, I've got Legos and bobbleheads and different things that I have in my office that I love doing. What is your sort of like nerddom that you really enjoy?
I mean, I'll do. There's quite a few things lately. We've gotten into trying to learn how to gold mine. So that's been kind of a hobby my girlfriend and I have both delved into. I'll do Legos. Like I've got this Lego guy right here. And that one was fun. When you like spin the tires, the motor actually like does revolving. I don't know if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, there you go.
Nice.
So that's fun. Yeah, and I do play video games still. I play them probably more than I should, quite honestly. I play Civilization, Civ 7.
Yep. I used to get lost in hours of Civ, just sitting there and like you get done and you're like, how did I get to the nuclear age? Like, how did I get here?
Oh yeah, it's one of those games where you can just sit there and all of a sudden you like wake up and you're like, I'll just play for a few hours, and then it's like, oh my god, I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, and it's at the next time you look up, it's the next day, and you're like, well, that was a few hours, but it was probably a few more than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Oh, it's an easy one to get lost in.
Oh yeah. Also, yeah, I like playing games. I haven't played Civ in a long time because I don't want to get sucked into a game like that. Like I could easily just sit there and do all of that over and over and lose myself. I play games like Diablo style games. Like right now I'm into what is it? Path of Exile, because I haven't beaten it yet. So I figure I should beat that one, but I've beaten Diablo enough so that I don't need to beat that one right now. And it's a lot of fun because I can go for a little while. I can beat a couple dungeons, I can beat a few maps, and then stop for the day and not feel like I've lost anything. And so I'm glad you get entertainment too and find ways to entertain yourself and find joy. I do want to get your thoughts on some of the things that have gone on recently in the world before we get into any of our real like interview questions that I have for you. And again, don't worry, they're easy questions. You don't have to. They may challenge you in some spots, but they're easy questions because they're about you and who you are and what's gotten you to this point as a man. And then, as everyone knows in our audience and those who follow along, that ends with the 4 questions from Mulan, I'll make a man out of you. The chorus line turned into a question set. And so we're just gonna have a good conversation on that when we get there. But there have been some things that have gone on in this last week that Obviously, there's things that have been going on nonstop for weeks and weeks and weeks,
Yeah.
but there have been a couple things that have gone on in this past couple week that I'd be interested in your thoughts on. So one of them is we've had the the U.S. leadership threaten the Pope, um, and I'd like your thoughts on that. I haven't asked really anybody how they actually feel about the U.S. government threatening the Pope, because I'm not Catholic and it's not my religion, but also probably shouldn't threaten the head of another religion. That seems, or a religion, that seems like a stupid idea.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of had it right there. You shouldn't really probably threaten the head of another culture in general, because over in the Vatican, it's like a small country inside of where they're stationed. It's not they don't necessarily have the same rules and laws that the surrounding area does. So it really is another leader of another culture or a miniature nation. And the Catholics at one point in time ran a majority of the world. So, I mean, trying to scare them into anything is kind of ridiculous. It just makes me think of like Game of Thrones when they militarized the religion in that show.
Oh
That's
yeah.
like, so if you're threatening the Pope, are you going to eventually give them an excuse? Oh, we're scared, so now we need to have our own miniature military, just temporarily, we swear, to be able to fend off Trump. And the next thing you know, we've got a second crusade going on. I just think it shows how petty the current administration of the United States is, for one. And it shows how ridiculously simple-minded they are to not foresee the potential backlash that could come from making threats like that, and placing yourself at a level where you can threaten the Catholics' voice of God, essentially. And so I don't know. Everything they do is ridiculous, though. So that's kind of it's a hard one to it's hard to say that's ridiculous, because everything they do is ridiculous. So
Yeah, yeah. And so we each find our own form of yes. Also agreed, totally. They are ridiculous, and I don't dismiss their ridiculousness, because oftentimes we like to. Many people will downplay the ridiculousness because they're just like, oh, he's being ridiculous, or they're being ridiculous, and then we're like, well, no, they're actually saying what they want to do. They just make it sound ridiculous so that people downplay what they're doing. Um,
yeah.
and you do creative work, you do creative writing, you're a creative on here. How do you use that to, or what do you use that to? I know you do, because you're a creative writer. Is how do you use your creative writing as an act of resistance against these sorts of behaviors and these types of actions? We're just going over the attack of the Pope, or the threat of attack on the Pope, um, from the U.S. government, and what that symbolizes, and just how do we use creativity as a form of resistance, and how do you personally use it to both keep yourself sane but also express your values?
So I've gotten a lot. When I first got on here, I was just blatantly stating what I believe and how I feel. I would just, be like, if I felt like saying fuck Trump that day, I would just say fuck Trump. And you'd see a bunch of, posts and notes about, how horrible of a president he is or whatever. I've gotten a little bit more subtle with it. So, for instance, I wrote an article just last week about the similarities between cult leaders and serial killers. And that was, I sort of intended that to draw attention to, without naming it or anything like that, draw attention to how, a cult leader can sometimes end up being someone that you don't expect them to be. And no matter what, they're probably a freaking sociopath. So that's the thing that definitely I believe most cult leaders, if not all of them, and serial killers have in common, is that they're sociopaths. They truly are narcissistic, sociopathic, the works. So That's kind of how I vent it out. I also do things. I'm not really at like a spot where I'm doing it as much as I will eventually, but I want to create more stories that kind of, poke fun at the administration without actually, naming them. Because it's one of the reasons I moved away from just stating, fuck Trump or whatever, is I don't want to say his name as much in my stuff as I can. That guy gets enough attention as it is. Nobody is a bigger attention whore than Trump. And so, I'm tired of feeding the algorithm for him. And I believe that's honestly a lot of the reasons that he does the ridiculous stuff that he does is so that he does stay at the top of the algorithms. He does stay at the top of the news. People do keep on discussing him because even if it's bad, I think he gets a sort of sick pleasure from that, and so I don't want to feed that, it's like, if I had a, stalker, I wouldn't keep on, changing in front of an open window for them. I'd call the cops and get them arrested and get them the fuck out of my backyard, and so that's essentially what I'm doing with my new approach with my content on Substack.
I like that. Has it helped your mental health, your approach to your work? What has it done for you? Or what is it doing for you as you shift the way you think about approaching this type of either resistance or writing in general? Like what shift has it done for you mental health wise and maybe physical health wise?
So I don't feel quite so on edge all the time. I do keep up on the news, I do keep up, like, mostly. I don't, go in as in depth as I was for quite a while there when I was writing more news related content. But, I don't feel quite like as like on edge as I did before. But also I feel a little bit less, I feel like I'm not like doing all that I should also. So there is a little bit of a negative. It's mostly positive because I do feel less stressed. I do feel less, like I have to grind out news every damn day just to, be relevant or whatever. I still write as much as I normally do, but it's not news related. So that's nice. It's more fun to be creative for me. Like I just wrote an article about my cat and I getting into a fist fight over not giving her enough food. And so that kind of content is fun for me, because it's ridiculous and so off the wall. But I also, like I said, I do feel a little bit like I'm not serving my country. I've always loved my country. That's the one. I never felt like I was a part of a group. I never felt like I was part of, this group or that or whatever. And so I always felt like the only group I really, truly belonged to was the Americans. And so I feel like I'm kind of in a way letting down my belief and my respect for our founding fathers who had their own, problems and made mistakes and were not perfect people at all. But I very much enjoy the writing and teachings of Benjamin Franklin. I love reading George Washington's, work and the things that he did. I'm a deist similar to George Washington. I believe that if there is a God, I don't believe he has any sort of effect in our day-to-day life. I don't think he's down here guiding individual hands or doing anything like that. I believe that there is a deity. Then it's a very hands-off approach, which is something Washington also believed in. And I didn't learn that till after I built those beliefs. So that was kind of cool to find out. It comes with a few different mixed emotions. Quite honestly, it's, part of me feels, more relief. And then part of me also feels like I'm a little bit letting down my nation. So.
Well, first I want to say, I don't think you're letting down your nation. By one part of the issue that we are facing as a nation is we're facing a crisis of identity, especially around men and how men move in society and exist and what it means to be a man and how men treat others around them and what types of actions men are allowed to either emote or not emote, but also what types of emotions we're allowed to emote, what types of behaviors are considered okay. Like I want I I saw this from Dana Dubois this morning. Was there's news of an online rape school that like trains men and boys how to rape people, and I understand, and I understood beforehand, but I understand entirely why women say all men. I understand it in, and until we're willing to actually stand up and confront it in our own lives, either those very, very close to us as family members, or confront your own behaviors that you're still working on, like this won't get fixed. Like we
Yeah.
can't stop this, and it's just fucking gross. And I think it's important where I come back to on this is why I say I don't think you're failing, is because men need models of masculinity right now that are non-standard. We need models of men who are better and who just suck less than the men that are currently in existence, that are currently running things. And for the longest time, and for the time that we're in, we're facing the ultra like abuse of purity culture, and purity culture is anti-creativity. And to face that purity culture, men have to be creative, and men have to be willing to show that creativity boldly and openly. And I think you're not failing in any, and I hope you maybe take away that you're not failing, is that the creativity itself is part of the necessary process, so that other men can see that there are real examples of what it means to be a man without having to be a piece of shit. Um, and so give yourself credit. And I know it's hard to do when we feel like we're not doing enough. But as someone who served in the military and who's gone to Afghanistan, like you're doing it right now. Like it's more important that you are you than being an aggressive like warmonger of some sort in that way. Like, because I think the feeling of failure is, are we not revolutionary enough right now? Are we not doing enough to force the issue? And I think part of that is we are forcing the issue by talking about ourselves and expressing creativity and breaking through that purity culture mindset. And for white men, I think that's really important, because we're the most purity culture of the groups. So I hope you give yourself credit for that, for the creativity that you're doing, because I find it a useful and helpful and good thing to have around. And it gives me hope that I should keep doing what I'm doing because other men are also doing it.
Yeah. No. Oh, I almost done. Holy crap. There we go. I was unplugging my mic on accident. I don't even know how that was happening. So just quit touching it then, Kenyon.
Keep my hands where I can fidget with things that are not the things.
Yeah. Just grab the edge of the desk and hold on tight.
Like I fidget all the time while I'm at my desk, and it keeps me from touching the microphone because I'm like, ooh, that'll be annoying.
Yeah. I tend to reach around and like grab little stuff around me and try to play with it, and I have to remind myself I'm on camera. I do agree with you. The traditional aspect of masculinity that most people consider to be the most realist form is kind of a bullshit definition, if you ask me. I mean, you have to be this grouchy guy that never shows emotion, and you're just a hard ass, and all you do is you get up and you work 10 days a week, 30 hours a day, and go home and tell your family and children what to do, and then go to bed, rinse and repeat. I think that's crap. And as for what you're saying, Dana was talking about, I actually was listening to a podcast a while back where there was a group Discord. So they were a Discord based group that would go through and they would use like these girls to find these other girls, and then they would blackmail them and stuff. They would like find like they get them to send, and when I say girls, I mean girls. I'm not talking about women. And they would find like stuff on their computers or whatever, hack them, and they would, hold them hostage with their content and stuff, like we'll show the world that you did this if you don't, keep sending us, pictures of this. They even talked some people, because it was this grotesque and horrible, into like killing themselves on camera for the group.
Jesus.
Yeah, dude. Like, and so that doesn't actually surprise me what Dana had posted at all whatsoever, because like there are some absolutely appalling and disgusting human beings on this planet. And I agree that concept, all men, is hard to argue with when you see so many participate in it. And so like where I grew up, it was, and this is, trigger warning, this is disgusting. Turn your headset off for the next 30 seconds. It was a very common thing for men where I grew up to say, if she's old enough to bleed, she's old enough to breed.
I've heard that. Yeah,
my dad was like 38, which is the age I am right now, and my mom was 15 when she got pregnant with me. So it's
yeah.
It's getting, it was more, normal back then, but it wasn't. It was still against the law, it was still illegal, and even then. And so and my dad didn't stick around because he was afraid. I was a prison sentence in his mind, so all he could ever do was deny. But people around my dad would consider him a stand-up, masculine man's man type guy, and so seeing that growing up, I was like, I never want to really be that guy. I don't want to be afraid to wear pink and purple because, it's not a guy's color. I don't give a what a guy's color is. I like pink, and I think purple is pretty. So kiss my ass,
I mean, pink looks good on you too, and purple. I've seen you in this outfit a lot. I know this is like a standard like look you go with when you come on shows. It looks good on you. I like it.
Thank you.
I like your background is purple. I think it's great that you've got like a cool color scheme that you enjoy. Like the logo, they'll point to it there, floating over my head is pink and purple. I did that.
Yes,
like all my logos are sort of on that theme. Like I look good in pink. I've always had like a pink shirt or like pink button up, things like that, because I like pink. I think I look good in it. When I was in middle school, I wore a freaking pink skirt to school. Like, yes, it was part of the middle school circus, but I wore it to school all day anyway. And you know what? Fuck you guys. I can do what I want. Nobody told me no. My parents didn't tell me no. And so let's get into some of these questions, because this sort of fits in right in line with the beginning of our actual question set, which if we don't get through all the questions, the only important ones that I have for you are the Mulan ones.
Okay.
And the rest of them are, we've been talking around them and we've been talking about them already. But let's dig into it. So, hey, y'all, I'm Nick Perro, not your dad, here with Kenyon Byers for Intelligent Masculinity on Sick of the Shit Publications. And we're about to get some additional intelligent masculine discussion as we work our way into the questions. And you were starting to talk about someone who was important in your life, maybe for a bad reason, or maybe for some bad reasons, was your dad. And so the first questions that I have for you are around both of our standard spectrum sides that we associate gender with. And this is, you can say you don't associate gender spectrums. You can talk about, we've talked about like how gender spectrums are just figments of our imaginations, things like that. The bullshit that we tell ourselves to make fit ourselves into little boxes. But there's two like sides that we, at least in the English language, talk about emotions on, which is masculine and feminine. Just like most other languages, we have genderized a lot of words in many ways, or the meanings of those words. But this one is important for me. So I use those words instead of male and female, because I think there are masculine women and masculine folks who are not male, and there are very feminine men, or feminine people who are not women. And that's okay. And we need both. We need all sides of the spectrum because it's better humaning. So my first question, leading off of what we were just talking about, sort of is your dad a little bit, but it doesn't have to be him. It can be any influential person in your life on this one, either good, bad, could be from a deity to a fictional character in a book that really made an impact on you. Is who has been one of the most influential masculine figures in your life and why?
This is oh God, fictional characters. A lot of fictional characters have been really influential in the way like I view things. For instance, one is Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series. Just the way like he approaches all different beings and creatures of different, walks of life, belief systems and everything, just with a sense of like fairness, besides Harry being his favorite, but with a sense of fairness that, that taught me. And it's ironic that the individual who created that character of pure acceptance, because that's what Dumbledore is now someone who is known as being an unaccepting individual. Very, very ironic to me. Don't meet your heroes, I guess, right? Or don't let them get social media.
Yeah.
But as a real person who has been influential in my life, I would say would be like Tupac. I learned a lot about like how to treat people and stuff from like his lyrics, not necessarily his actions, because those could be debatably horrible, some of them. But the lyrics that he had before I understood more about him as an individual were ones that, taught like respect, consider the woman who is, down and out, you don't just think, oh God, she had a kid because she's a little skank. There might be more going on in her home than you realize, which is a whole song, or don't look down as the person who's poor. You don't know why they're poor. It also was when I first started learning about how the government would give, impoverished people, guns and drugs, and then just step back and watch them kill themselves and each other, So he opened my eyes to a lot of the way that the world works. I had someone introduce him to me when I was roughly around 9 years old. Which is when my stepdad first smoked weed with me. So maybe there's something there together with those two. So it was a busy year for Kenyon. But
you opened your eyes in many ways that year.
Yeah. I mean, it's there are a few different people. Like I said, I've always Benjamin Franklin is one. I absolutely love Benjamin Franklin. Him and I have quite a few little weird things in common. One of the things, so he would create aliases and he would write into newspapers arguing with himself. So he'd create like a, John Jones character and write in and be like, that Benjamin Franklin guy is a real menace, just to get like things like going about him. That's how like when I first started like on social media, that's how like I got like going originally, was I would start arguments like with myself and it would draw the crowds to come watch, and then later I learned about Benjamin Franklin doing this. This was years and years ago at this point, because I realized that it would up engagement if there was something for people to come and discuss, and so I always thought that was a fascinating little piece of history about old Ben. But yeah, I don't know. There's a bunch of other people. I had to create my own male figures. Like I said, my dad, I was a prison sentence to my dad. So he was too afraid to be around me until I was like 12 or 13 years old or so. And I guess he figured that he was safer by then. So.
Interesting. What do you mean by that? If you're comfortable going into that, what do you really mean by that?
Which part?
The prison sentence for your dad.
Oh, because he was 38 and my mom was 15. So he didn't want to go to prison for statutory rape or whatever. So like he avoided me like the plague, denied I was his for most of my life. He probably still denies I'm his sometimes. Like he's not like a really affectionate person towards me. He seems to love his older two kids a little bit. He doesn't really seem to care about me too much. Like even like I went up and saw him. He's old now, he's in his mid 70s at this point, and I went and just saw him because I don't want the guilt of being like in the area and him passing away and being like, oh, I could have stopped and just said hi to the old dude, but I stopped and like he wouldn't even get up out of his chair to like give me a hug goodbye or anything. He's not an affectionate individual at all. He shook my hand, so that was the amount of affection that man is willing to give. So that's we're talking about influence. That has the negativity sometimes of some individuals can influence you to be better. And so things like that with him, denying that I was his kid for so long influenced me to never even try to do that. Except for like, I'll mess with my kids now that they're older and be like, you're not my son, but it's just literally a joke or whatever, but yeah, he was a real winner in that regard. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I brain farted on that one because you talked about that earlier. But
oh, you're good.
That's one. What a piece of shit. Like, first off, don't rape kids.
Yeah.
A child, you can never have sex with a child. It is always rape.
Yeah.
And that's you just have to live with that. And I think it's okay that, to be honest, I don't think you should need to feel guilt if you don't ever visit him and you're in the area, because I don't think we need to feel guilt towards people who deserve no pity, in that way. Like, took advantage of a child, and he didn't want to face purposely avoided the consequences of those actions for most of his life, or parts of his life, because it would have been, like you said, a prison sentence for him, and is just, it's the definition of frail masculinity is what that really comes down to, and what we're facing right now in a lot of ways, and why it wasn't a surprise when I saw that there are online rape schools, but it was disgusting.
Disappointing. Yeah.
Disappointing, but not shocking, not surprising, because we've heard and seen so much about rape culture as part of just culture right now, and that's gross. Like, I don't know how else to put it. It's just we have to stand up to it in our own lives, and I think it's okay not to feel guilty if you don't visit, or if, especially after like a conclusive visit where it was, you went to say kind of goodbye and he shook your hand instead of even giving you the decency. Like, that sucks, and I'm sorry. I don't have that example in my life, so I can't relate to it. But I am upset that it's like, that's just the human condition in a lot of ways right now for men. And I think it's because of this next part of the question is most of these men never allowed themselves to have a feminine figure that was positive in their life, or they never acknowledged a positive feminine figure in their life, or they never wanted to learn from a feminine figure in their life.
Yeah.
Whereas we do, and we have many positive and influential feminine figures in our lives. So who has been the most influential feminine figure in your life, and why?
That would probably be, honestly, my grandma. But also, I guess the last 7 years or so, it's been my girlfriend. I call her my wife and stuff sometimes because she might as well be, but I am going to marry that woman for sure. I love her more than I love myself, and she has been a huge influence. Before her, though, definitely I'd say my grandma. My grandma was a shining light through the darkness of growing up. My mom was, I think in my mom's own way, she tried, but she was usually more busy chasing around guys and fighting with dudes or fighting with the town over something. It seemed like in my memory of growing up, she would just, the only time she came to my rescue was if it was so that she could fight someone, And when I say fight, I don't mean just argue and stuff. My mom was a fighter, like literally I have memories of my mom beating up other women. She was the type of woman who was like, she called me like sissy and all this stuff growing up. And she would tell me that if I ended up being gay, she would kill me. because I was a little bit more feminine and stuff than any of the other guys in my, town that I grew, little mountain town I grew up in. Any of the kids my age were all, mud wrestling, fighting, talking about trucks and cars. And I was like, oh, hey, Mom, I wrote a poem,
Yeah.
Hey, she'd come home and like, I'd be like dancing around the living room to the Footloose, I think it's Footloose song, I Need a Hero, so she, and so she's like, oh God, he's musical, he likes poetry, and it's like, now I'm older, I know, like, I'm not gay, I'm not like straight either per se, I don't know what I would call myself even, but I don't fucking care. It's not like something that rules my existence. The worst part about being who I was other people attacking me for being who I was. Being who I am has never hurt me once. I've never been a horrible person because I like, things that people I grew up with considered girly. And so my grandma though was, she was the one who was like, you just be you, Kenyon, you just be who you are, so what, you're this little musical guy who likes pretty colors and playing with girls, toys with the girls and stuff, and also obsessed with scary movies. I mean, it's strange, but be you, grandson, be you.
We got to have someone in our life who lets us be ourselves. And I'm glad you had someone who was close to you that let you be yourself growing up and didn't judge you for it and force you into like a label on it. I mean, I went to school for music. My first degree is music theory and composition for classical music. Like,
That's awesome.
I got dared into joining the choir in high school, auditioning for the men's choir and select choir in high school, and I got in and I really liked it, and I was like, oh, I should probably just enjoy this, and I stopped caring too what that other people, if other people thought about it, and I let myself enjoy what I was doing, and I think that is a lesson I wouldn't have learned if it was just other men around for the most part, because many other men are just shitty towards each other on things like that, and how you express emotions, and it's taught into us in a lot of ways, and so we're trying to reframe that discussion and change the discussion so that we give men something that they can strive for, because I think for so much of what we have just let happen in a lot of ways, because we weren't loud enough, we didn't talk about it enough, was we didn't give men didn't give other men something to gravitate towards. We just told men what to be mad about, and then said that's really where you can emote, and the only emotion that you can feel. And so on the other end of it, I'm trying to define what intelligent masculinity is, what it actually means to be masculine. And so I have a working definition, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, or I can give you my definition. We can talk about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, if I ask you specifically, because I'm going to, is what would you define intelligent masculinity as? Like, how would you define intelligent masculinity and what it looks like to be a man who is a good human, who is a good all-around human?
I'd love to hear your definition. That's a difficult one. I'll instead of defining it, I'll say why I have a hard time defining it, because I have known people that I would consider good men who were some of the most, I don't know. I've known women who I would consider good men. You know what I mean? Women who have come out of the woodworks and been a father figure, so to speak, and a mother figure for their children when the dads were just absolute pieces of filth. I know there have been good like women like that. So it is hard like for me to say, that. And then I've known men that consider themselves to be masculine. I've got an uncle that I'm thinking of, my dad, that I consider absolute pieces of crap. I mean, they're, they have redeeming qualities, they have good sides of who they are and stuff. But for the most part, they're just grumpy, unimaginative, boring human beings who are as predictable as the day is long. you know? And so it's a really hard one to define. I guess I'd have to say the closest definition I can get is a guy who's willing to be himself and always grow. What's your definition?
My definition, and I've been told too when I from some feedback in the articles, is this should. Why did you say masculinity here? Is because right now femininity is not the problem, but like this is a better humaning definition overall. And what I've come to is like it's not about our traditional definitions of masculinity in this case. And for me, intelligent masculinity is the refusal to outsource accountability onto others and the discipline to live with the consequences of our actions and values.
That's fair.
And we live in a time right now where men are being taught that there's no consequence, or continuing to be taught that there are no consequences to their actions. And we can see it. Like we have a president who's been convicted or adjudicated as at minimum a sexual assaulter, and been then later clarified by a judge that it was rape. And he's in the Epstein files, and there's many folks around him who are in the Epstein files. And this week, Eric Swalwell dropped out of the California governor's race and resigned from Congress because he has been credibly accused by multiple women of sexual assault at minimum. And I say at minimum because there is a legal difference between sexual assault and rape. I think they're equally just as fucking garbage, and we don't need to be doing either. And then it forced another congressional member, Tony Gonzalez, to resign because of allegations that he had against him. And yet that may be the end of the accountability for a lot of them. Is, oh, they lost their job a little bit, their reputation is slightly tarnished for a couple weeks, and then they'll be back, and people will forget about it. Like that's where we are. Is there's no consequence to those actions. We have online rape schools, like training academies for boys and men to learn how to rape people. Like, it's predatory because we don't have consequences for actions. And that's where I landed on. And every person at this point that I've had on the show has talked about that in some way. You, on that same line too, have been talking about the consequences. Your dad, your biological father, I'll say, or maybe sperm donor, however you want to refer to him. The person who impregnated your mom never faced consequences for that. He had self-imposed consequences, but they weren't real consequences. And we live in a society that allows that to happen. And so how do you model masculinity in your life to maybe building on that definition of with consequences in mind, or just living with the action, the consequences? Consequences can be good and bad. And that's why I use that one. Is there are good consequences to actions, there are bad ones too. So how do you model your masculinity? And other than, like, you've talked about some of it, is you purposely wear clothes that you enjoy, the colors that you like, and express yourself that way. How else do you model masculinity in your life, or just being yourself?
Well, and
love.
I mean, God, that's a tough one. So I've had to face consequences for my actions in my life. About 15 years ago, I got caught with 3.5 ounces of marijuana. And in Idaho, that's a big no-no. So I ended up with a felony charge for that. And that was, I'd had to face consequences in my life, before that and stuff, getting in trouble at school and, with parents and, whatever. But that was the first time in my life that I had to face actual, like, full-blown consequences that were life-changing for my own actions and choices. And so it really made me have to step back and look at myself in a way I never had before and realize, okay, I am an absolute fuck up. I'm going down a really bad path. I have a choice here. Either I can become a statistic and continue to break the law, go in and out of fucking jail and possibly prison, just to feel like I'm this, thug. I'm living the thug life that I feel like I, am supposed to because of how I was raised and everything. And or I can make a change, and I can accept responsibility. I can admit that, even though I don't agree with the cannabis laws, I broke them. I still, there still exists. It doesn't matter if I agree with them or not. They were still there, and I broke the law. And I can, take responsibility for that and move my life forward in a direction that's more appealing than jail and prison would be. And I did, and I'm not there yet. I still, have a long ways to go. It was slow at first. Spending years on probation made it hard to grow because you're kind of just, your life revolves around probation, a lot of it, and so, but, like I said, in the last, like when you asked about who's the influential, feminine or female figure in my life, that would, like I said, my grandma, but also I mentioned my girlfriend. She has taught me new ways of dealing with everything, and also seeing how much she loves her dad and how her dad deals with things has also taught me a lot as well. They're a good family, they're good, to each other, they're fair, they're helpful, which is a total like mind blow for me, from the family I grew up in. And so, I was able to, take accountability for myself, learn that I had to grow, and then leave like my friends and, most of my family behind, and come, be with her and around her family in the way that she does things, in the way that she's accepting, in the way that she's loving of her children, and learn a new way of doing things myself, which is added to, my self-identity, and, has really pulled me out of what I would call a shell of mental illness that I couldn't escape for many years of my life. And so it really started because I had to make myself, and I didn't have to, because like you said, a lot of guys don't. I had to make myself take accountability for my shitty choices in life. I am in favor of cannabis use. I am in favor of, weed and legalizing it and stuff, at least medicinally. But I broke the law, and so I had to pay the consequences. And honestly, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I know that's sad, but it's the truth. Admitting that I did something wrong was the first step, and it was incredibly difficult, and took me years to actually fully believe, not just say, so that my probation officer didn't, ride my ass or whatever, but actually believe I, Kenyon Byers, have done something wrong. And I have to change so that I don't end up a piece of trailer trash in and out of jail the rest of my life. And I haven't been back since. In fact, the year before last, I got the felony dismissed. So I'm no longer even a felon,
Awesome.
And so
good for you.
Yeah, thank you. And so, that's I don't know if that answered the question.
No, I think it does. Like in fact, I think it does in all the ways. Like, you took accountability for your actions. You suffered a very real consequence in your life. And then you said, I'm the problem, not other people. And maybe it took a while to get to the I'm the problem in this situation, but you got there, and you are actively continuing to work on fixing it and continuing to grow from it. So you model intelligent masculinity or intelligent humaning because you took action, and you took the consequences, and you said, I need to learn and grow from it. Like Walter Ryan and I say is, now you know so you can grow. And you just have to be willing to not only know that you can grow, but also then actively feed that growth. And one of those big things, and I'll have to have you condense this answer because I want to get to the final 4 questions. Those are lightning rounds. That one, there's nothing wrong with those. Like, there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's just lightning round, whatever comes to the top of your head. But it sounds like you've had to actively grapple with the idea of self-reflection and self-evaluation, because otherwise you would not have come to the conclusion that K.R. Byers did something wrong and needs to fix himself. What do you do to continue that self-evaluation and self-reflection? Like, what is your favorite tool to use to continue growing?
The bathroom scale.
That's a good answer.
No, so I'm honestly, it drives, that's one thing. It drives my girlfriend nuts sometimes. I am incredibly self-evaluatory. For instance, a couple weeks ago on Dana and the Daily Whatever show, I used the word pussy and bitch to describe a person being cowardly. And I immediately realized what I had done, admitted I did wrong, apologized for it, and corrected my terminology. Because I don't ever want to make someone feel like they're less because of how they were born. That's never, my, desire and stuff. But I made a mistake then, and I could have. I very well could have made someone feel like, they were being, singled out or, degraded on because, of just a couple of simple terms that are easy to switch up for a word cowardly, which can describe anyone, And so, those, I'm pretty fast about it. I've gotten really quick at being like, oh, I said this thing, it was freaking wrong, and I need to correct that. The most work I do that's the hardest still is my own mental self-worth. There is that thing as a guy that if I'm not making $1 billion an hour, then I'm a failure as a man. And that's something I fight every day to, convince myself, no, you're not. You contribute to your family. You still do good. Your lady loves you, and so, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. I think that's great. I agree. And I don't want to derail myself because I want to get to these last questions.
Okay.
I was going to go into something, but I want to get these last questions in because this is my favorite part is the I'll make a man out of you chorus line for our question set. So again, no wrong answers. These are all fun. You can think as hard as you want or as quick on your feet as you want. We've had some great answers and non-answers for some of these. So first, what does it mean to be as swift as a coursing river?
To make decisions more decisively than I just did just then, that's for sure.
How do you embody the force of a great typhoon?
When I come in a room, I've been there because everything is wrecked.
That's fair. That's fair. How are you as strong as a raging fire? And I'll qualify this one because when I say raging fire, I mean there's a difference between a wildfire and a raging fire in a fireplace, one that is hot but contained. So how are you as strong as a raging fire?
I dance to pop music in the living room by myself, and I'm not ashamed of it. So I dance like the flames, like a raging fire. I rage in the living room by myself. I don't know.
Have you ever been left shark or right shark and done the shark dance? Do you remember all that from the
Baby Shark?
No, Taylor Swift had secondary dancers that took over the show. Basically, they were in shark costumes.
No.
Most people remembered left shark or right shark. And they just had a great time. Anyway, final question. How are you as mysterious as the dark side of the moon?
I seem like an open book, but I actually, you can see, I'm willing to discuss anything, but there is a lot more to my story and past than I have ever once discussed online or with people.
That's fair. That's fair. And there needs to be a separation too between personal and private, and it's okay to keep some things to yourself and not discuss certain topics about your life. And no, we do not bring up Baby Shark here. Left shark, right shark, yes, not the other sharks. I've heard that song enough. Anyway, actually, I lied. That was not our last question. This is the easiest question of the day. It's our final question. So how can people support the work that you're doing? Where can they find you? And I'll pop up your picture here in a QR code.
Well, you're gonna have to listen to me through my background music because my clock just came on. So I should probably shut that off during shows.
I think it's a great outro here for us.
So you can find me by following that QR code is one way that you can do that. You can find me on social medias by looking at KR Byers. I'm pretty much usually on most platforms. I'm the only one that holds the name, KR dash Byers or KR space Byers or what have you. You can support my work by, subscribing. Paid subscriptions are best, wink, wink. Other than that, just come say hello, comment, share. That's a great way to help contribute to this ongoing experiment with entertainment and creativity.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Kara. This has been really fun.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad to have you on today. It was really good to get to know you and hear more about your story and who you are and where you've come from and how you've grown and been willing to change your life or become something that you weren't before or accept who you actually are and live your life. So thanks for being on here. Everyone, please, if you're on Substack or anywhere else, hit the subscribe, snap a picture of the QR code, subscribe to KR, subscribe to myself if you can as well here at Sick of This Shit Publications. We're done being sick of this shit here, so we're doing this shit. Go have a great day, everyone. Y'all will see me here later. If you're watching this live today on April 16th, you'll actually see me two more times today. Come join me in about half an hour for the Diogenes Club with my friends Evan Fields and Walter Ryan. Eric Lulov is out today. He had a family member pass, and Eric, I'm sorry for your loss, my friend. And I send my love to you guys, to you and your family. And then join me tonight on Disability Community. Nothing About Us Without Us, I believe is the underlying podcast name with Nita Green, where we'll be discussing the impacts of war and disabilities and what the disabling effects of war are. So I look forward to having both those conversations today. KR, thanks for joining me, and everyone in the audience, thanks for being here. We'll see you again next week, or see you again later if you're watching this today. Thanks, y'all. Have a great one.